Ukiyo-e is a Japanese art form that utilizes woodblock printing as its medium to create striking works of art. Bold blocks of color, clearly defined shapes and edges, and unusual perspectives are just some of the traits that make ukiyo-e truly distinctive. Many works focus on seemingly simple everyday situations and scenarios, such as natural scenes and landscapes, as well as portraits and scenes of women in a category known as bijinga, though there is also a good number of fantasy or mythical pieces. Despite many works falling within these 2 or 3 categories, each print is often vastly different to the next, and their simplicity only adds to the desire of wanting to fully understand the context of each piece. It's much like peering into a window of another life. Ukiyo-e stands as Japan's most popular form of art that has both excited and inspired for centuries. Ukiyo-e came about during the relatively peaceful Edo period, during the rule of the Tokugawa shogunate, prior to which countless wars, rebellions, and feudal conflict between ruling lords was common. The Battle of Sekigahara was the catalyst of this change. The stability that was brought about during this 250-year period led to an increase in the enjoyment of arts and culture, as well as the ambition to capture and depict the times the people were living in. Ukiyo-e was one such art that emerged. The term ukiyo-e translates as pictures of the floating world in English, and while this expression is certainly a bit ambiguous in describing its style, the truth is that the floating world was a term used to refer to the entertainment and pleasure districts in Japan, and the earliest prints depicted typical scenes you would find within. Hishikawa Moronobu is one of the earliest artists accredited to advancing ukiyo-e, producing prints closely related to the pleasure industry. Courtesans and entertainers featured heavily in his work. Yet, ukiyo-e evolved beyond this, where the processes and techniques were applied to other themes, alongside the continuation of painting so-called beauties. The late 18th century was when a broader use of colour started to be included in the printing process. Before this, black and white prints were most common, with perhaps some simple colour appearing up until the mid-18th century. The other popular subject of landscapes started to appear following this transition. Scenic views and nature, with the inclusion of towns and structures, became increasingly popular and peaked in the early 19th century. It is around this time that 2 of the most well-known names of ukiyo-e, Katsushika Hokusai and Utagawa Hiroshige, can be found making their mark on the movement, with Hokusai's The Great Wave off Kanagawa, also known as Under the Wave of Kanagawa, was printed in 1831, becoming one of the world's most famous pieces of art. The introduction of the Edo period of Japan marked the beginning of the country's self-imposed isolationist period, which ended in 1854 with the signing of the treaty between America and Japan. However, this also signalled the decline of ukiyo-e. With Japan once again open to the West, competition and new technology diminished ukiyo-e's importance and status. While it continued on to the very early 20th century, the themes once again changed to depict current and factual events with darker tones. Creating a ukiyo-e print is not a straightforward affair. Traditionally, there would be at least 3 different people working on a single project: the artist, the carver, and the printer. Let's explain the process with an example. Here is a print titled A Young Lady Playing a Musical Instrument by Chobunsai Eshi, also known as Hosoda Eshi. First, the artist will create a line drawing of the proposed piece. From this, numerous copies can be produced by tracing over the original image, often using basic ink. Sometimes only the most important features are copied, with some of the details excluded, which can be added via printing later. From this, a number of woodblocks are created for each different colour that is intended to be used. Here, about 8 seems reasonable, but prints produced later into the movement can often move beyond double figures. The carver will then carve away all parts of each woodblock that doesn't use a specific colour. So one block will be just the purple part of the robe, another will be just the red, and so on. The rest of the image is chiselled away. The printer will then use these in turn to print each colour separately until the print is completed. Special marks on each woodblock allowed the paper to be placed in the correct spot each time. While ukiyo-e, by and large, was an art movement unique to Japan, it came to have great influence in the West following the end of Japan's isolationist period. The term Japonism, first coined by the French, was a trend that arose from the exposure of these new Japanese woodblock prints. After the initial enthusiasm for ukiyo-e, many artists looked to incorporating some of its aspects into their own work. Some Western artists were influenced more than others, and a number of now well-known names were among them. Edouard Manet, Claude Monet, Vincent van Gogh, Edgar Degas, and Gustav Klimt. For example, some of Manet's works included some subtle inclusions of Japanese items within his paintings, which can be seen in Women with Fans and Portrait of Émile Zola. Claude Monet, on the other hand, created a Japanese garden in his home, followed by paintings such as water lilies and Japanese bridge. But ukiyo-e had perhaps the biggest effect on Vincent van Gogh. One of his first incorporations of Japanism inspired by ukiyo-e was in the famous portrait of Paris Tanguy. However, in the same year, 1887, he proceeded to directly recreate a handful of Utagawa Hiroshige's prints to better understand the work. Take a look at The Flowering Plum Orchard and Bridge in the Rain. There can be no doubt of the Japanese influence, what with the kanji inlaid borders. However, these are recreations of Hiroshige's Plum Park in Kamedo and Sudden Shower over Shinhohashi Bridge, respectively, but painted rather than printed in Van Gogh's own style. Despite the peak of ukiyo-e production and influence being well and truly past, it remains a popular form of Japanese art that is admired and collected by many. The images of ukiyo-e have successfully transitioned into parts of modern culture, most notably in product designs, and none more so than the image of the Great Wave of Kanagawa by Hokusai, which is seemingly everywhere. However, replica prints of original works are also now commonly available, and importantly inexpensive to acquire, meaning that anyone can appreciate and enjoy this piece of Japanese art history.